Hi guys. Hi, how are you? Why a touch of pink?
Right. I love the What Women Want Summit. I think this is my third one because I feel like it's such a collection of stories and ideas. And more than anything, it gives us a safe space to just come as we are and demand what we want. Our amazing team has already talked a little bit about Dada culture. I don't want to get too much into it again. I'll be inviting Angela Waweru shortly. We'll do a one-on-one, and then in a few minutes we'll have Lydia and Muthoni and have a panel with the two of them. But Dada culture is really supposed to be a way that we shift the way women see themselves. The reason I wanted to come up with the platform and have amazing culture shapers, I believe, like Lydia and Angela and Muthoni, is because there's a huge conversation around gender norms, and I know some of those words are big and development. The truth is, sometimes we are not often given enough variety of people that we can kind of look at and say, okay, that's interesting. I never thought I'd be able to have that kind of conversation or do that kind of job. So Dada culture really is around shifting the culture of how women and girls see themselves and see other women and girls to just give us a variety of things and options that we can do. And I think it's important because what we see oftentimes is what we internalize, what we believe, and then that's how we either shame ourselves or limit ourselves. But these are people who are saying, I'm going to have bold conversations around this subject matter because I believe we need to shift the culture of how this conversation is had. How are you?
I'm good. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at 100.
You're 100. Wow. I should learn to say that. I'm always like, Niko tu sawa. We should stop being apologetic about how we are. And if we're not okay, we should also admit to it. Angela, the reason I wanted to speak to you is because I know we work in similar spaces.
Yeah.
What I love about what Angela has done through Sister Speaks Global, through the Overreact podcast, is not only have you continued to mainstream conversations around reproductive health and periods, but you've diversified it into kind of just integrating it with very bold ideas and following through with them.
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit about why you feel it was important to shift the culture of how we were having conversations around periods and reproductive health.
Maybe a little bit about my personal journey. So I have a sister, we are 10 years apart, and I don't want to reveal my age, but anyway, I don't care. So about 2011, I saw a conversation with Oprah and Sheryl Sandberg talking about Lean In and talking about trying to help women. And so I remember watching that interview and I thought, yeah, that makes sense to me, but who's doing it for the girls? And because I have a younger sister, so there are things I've done ahead of her. So I taught her about how to save. I taught her about relationships. I wanted her to have less experience with sorrow than I have. So that was the beginning of my journey. But then I grew up in the UK, so I wanted to now do it for the sisters. They say charity begins at home, so I wanted to do it for the sisters who are based in Kenya and help in that. And so that's how I found myself here. So in my journey, fast forward, we came together with Angela and Mo, and the beginning of Sister Speaks came from a point where we were all going through particular situations and scenarios in our life, and we found comfort in speaking and sharing, right? So it's really important I always say be careful not to be a champagne bottle, because if you keep everything indoors, inside you, one day you will pop and everyone will be like, whoa, what happened? And so the idea of Sister Speaks was then, how do we create safe spaces for women to stop popping and finding other women that they can maybe share something here, one or two, and they can release. And then from that, you start to find the confidence in speaking out, right? So it's called Sister Speaks because we want sisters to be speaking, and not only speaking publicly, like what I'm doing here, but even speaking in your silences, in your family homes. Speak out if your mom or dad or your sister are putting you in situations that you don't want to. Find that confidence. And so the point of our events was to build and empower someone to find their voice in platforms if they want to, in homes, in their jobs. And it's really important to speak out because no one really knows what you have going on unless you share. And then on the on the like emotional side, no one really knows what you're good at unless you use LinkedIn and say, hey guys, this is what I do. Or you use your social media, which Lydia's really good at. But like no one really knows you exist until you share that you exist.
So that's really great, that journey of your why.
Yeah, my why was first, I have a younger sister and I want to save her from sorrow. I know I can't save her from everything, but how do I include other younger sisters like that? And she's so much better with money and finance than I am because like she's gotten lessons from me. And so our journey has then been beyond our events with Heels Connect. For those who don't know, follow at Sister Speaks 254. We have a regular event. In fact, actually, we've had both of you in our events. And so the event is called Heels Connect because we want your heels to connect. A lot of you go to events, you're going to sit here, you're going to listen to Janet, you're going to listen to all, and you'll come out here with no contact. So I encourage you to come out with a contact that's warm, one that you can connect with, because you really don't know who you're sat next to. Maybe today they have the word that you need to inspire you. Maybe they have an idea that can help you innovate. Maybe they have a connect that can lead you to your money, to your education. So talk to the dada next to you. But that was the idea. And then from that is when we realized, of course, there's these women and girls who cannot come to our events for money purposes or just don't know we exist. And so we're all connected here because we're all a product of we're all a product of a missing period, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Men and women involved, right? And so there's girls who don't have access to dignity when it comes to menstruating, and women as well. So we have an organization called Heels for Pads Foundation, which we get your heels. So when you're done with your heels, come and see me at the back of the tent, and we flip those heels and we sell them, and we use that money to buy pads and empower girls. And so these kind of conversations, so now we take our Heels Connects, our Sister Speaks into the classrooms, and as we're teaching them about puberty and the journey and knowing their body, but also teaching them to speak, right? When something is happening and they are maybe experiencing abuse, to recognize that that is abuse. So we use now that space to educate and for them to understand, mtaki kushika hivi, no, and just teaching them that their body is their home. And just the same way you would scream if someone came and robbed your house, you should scream if someone comes and robs your home.
Just robs you of your dignity.
Yeah.
And conversations around periods, for me, are really important, and that's why I think it's great that what I think you've done as Sister Speaks is elevated it and mainstreamed it in a way that wasn't particularly the norm. When I started conversations around periods, it was said or done within a certain way. Events were pretty straightforward. It was come, learn, donate, etc., which is still fine. I loved when I heard about Heels for Pads because I thought, yeah, we all have a pair of heels that we don't necessarily need. And that became its own movement of Heels for Pads. I also love what you've said about networking, because I think a lot of people hear the word networking and it sounds daunting. It sounds daunting because you feel like there's pressure to go in and, pitch yourself. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think we need to redefine when we talk about networking, when you talk about Heels Connect. If our incredible ladies in this room haven't been yet, and they're saying, it's a little intimidating when I hear the word networking, Kenya should come up with a list of triggering words. I'm not sure networking is one of them, but I know sometimes it's very intimidating and daunting. They may say, I don't know, man. I don't know how I can take myself somewhere. Maybe there's something I'm transitioning through. Maybe there's a shame I hold on to the fact that I haven't achieved certain goals at my age or with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
How can I then invite myself to go to Heels Connect? When I'm there, how do I approach it in a way that's beneficial for me for the long term?
First, start connecting with yourself naked in front of the mirror. Okay.
I didn't see that.
First, you have to connect with yourself. How can you connect with somebody else if you don't connect with yourself? I can't invite you into a conversation if I don't even know who I am. And when I say naked, I mean the inner parts of me. So get comfortable with yourself. Get comfortable with who you are, with clothes and without clothes. internally and externally. Once you identify that, then you can identify spaces that make sense. If for you, you're looking to enhance your job, you're looking to enhance a particular skill, so maybe start with that, right? If it's you want to put yourself out there, connect with new people, like-minded people, go to that. If it's faith-focused, go to that. But you have to know who you are to know which room you belong in. That's literally.
You have to know who you are to know which room you belong in.
Yeah.
That's really well said. And then there's a combination of that. And then when is the time to say, I'm now going to push myself out of the rooms I know and kind of push myself out of my comfort zone? How do you navigate that?
If you're the smartest out of your friends group, I'm going to use a conversation that I had with my cousin. And he asked a friend, like, what car, if they had all the money in the world, what car would they buy? And the answer, I'm not going to embarrass that person, but the answer they said, for all the money in the world, that's the car you'd buy. And with the kind of responses people give in the kind of conversations, and you're the smartest, you need to get out of that. You're the dumb one. You're the dumbest in the group, because if they're not challenging you and you're the ones challenging them, then you're not growing. Another analogy is we're climbing up the mountain. The higher that you go up the mountain, the thinner the air. You can't take everybody with you. So you have to understand who is coming up the mountain with you. And if you climb it alone, God is with you. He'll lead you. But you've got to decide who can handle the thin air. Who can walk that? Because if you keep carrying everybody, you're never going to get up to the mountain, because you keep going back to check up on them. And then going up, you'll never get there. So you also have to get to the point. And this is something that we struggle with as we grow older. We talk about breakups of relationships, but we don't talk about breakups of friendships. But sometimes it really is necessary to let go of people that you've known for a long time, because they are possibly not equipped spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically to go with you where you're going, and you have to recognize that. And it goes back to what I said: know who you are naked and know who you are with clothes. Know who you are internally and know who you are externally, so that you can start to have the discernment and the ability to know this person is not equipped to handle my dreams, so I can only give them a bit of it, because they'll start feeding me doubt, they'll start feeding me worry, they'll start feeding me projecting their own fears and what have you, which then, if I'm not careful,
it could limit me. And I think the reason why I wanted to do Dada Culture is because a lot of the time there's a lot of internalized messaging that women have had for the longest time. I didn't have that information. And I think if I'd had it, I'd have been able to know when is the right time to let go. I think I was letting go of things and people that didn't serve me when they'd already broken me. And I remember thinking, my gut feeling knew that this person was good for this season. My gut feeling knew that this relationship was already red alarms from the beginning.
Yeah.
But remember, we are told to edit ourselves and to vumilia and to say, it's okay, it's in your head. And I think I've seen a huge shift again with the women that I'm speaking to today, whether it's Angela, Lydia Muthoni, of women who maybe or not, maybe they don't know it, maybe they do, have been able to go into these spaces already with boundaries that then allow you to know you don't have to be defined by the cultural setup and internalized notions that have been defined for you. And it's not selfish to say, I can compromise here for a specific reason, but I cannot do it beyond this, because then I'm limiting myself, then I'm holding myself back. How were you able to bring all this into shifting the culture of how people are able to talk about menstrual health? And what has surprised you the most?
That people don't have money to buy. And this is coming from a privileged, very privileged point of view. I never imagined that I can't have a pad. And then the second shocking thing is that people can't talk to their dads and men, the men that they date, to buy them pads if they're down. That was shocking for me, because my dad is the one who bought me my first pad. And if I send him now, at 70, he'll still do it. And so just realizing the biases that I had, were coming from the household. And there was two things I wanted to mention in what you said, is that I've realized the Angela that's speaking right now is a much more calmer, softer, humble Angela, in the sense I've come to realize that my perspective defines my perception. Then I'm a bit more graceful in my understanding, because my perspective is I grew up in UK. So my perception is very different. I started work at 16. Like there are different ways. My experiences are much more different, and so my perspective can come a bit overwhelming if somebody has a different path. And so what we try to do, or even I as an individual, is we try to touch the women and the girls that no one talks to them. So we try our best to go to the rural and the informal settlements with our drives and have those conversations, and for me to gain fresh perspective so that I can understand that somebody from Garissa, I cannot talk to her like somebody from Nairobi because of what their experiences are, what they're exposed to, right? And then number two is, in point of what you had said earlier, is I live by one quote changed my life. It's by Henry Havelock Ellis. He's an American author, and it says, "The fine art of living lies in the mingling of learning when to let go and when to hold on." And a lot of us let go while still holding on. So one hand is holding on, and you've got to free yourself.
I feel attacked. I'm also trying to unlearn a lot of things.
Yeah.
How do you know? I think that's a very personal thing.
You've got to free to make room. But you want to hold on and you want to hold on and say you're letting go, but you're still holding on. You cannot make room for something new if you still got stuff. So you got to get rid of your stuff. You've got to unshed. You've got to unlearn, relearn. And we live in a more open culture where people are more expressive than when I grew up, right?
Yeah.
Right? The way people talk to their parents, sometimes I'm like, I could never. Or like I go to events, I'm like, oh my God, girl, like there are shoshos here. Why are you dressed like that? But that's because of how I've grown up. So.
But despite that, and I go back to, we will share rooms continuously. Everyone, men, women, but especially as women, what's happening now in society is there's this very delicate dance between persecution and progress. That's what I'm seeing. So there's a lot of pushback on the agency of women. We've done a lot of good work in allowing women to have these kinds of conversations, to have bold, open conversations. A lot of the time, not all, we assume that a lot of women are empowered. Nope, it's few of them. So what happens is you're empowered. You have permission to use your voice. You're in rooms where you say, I now know myself better. I now know my boundaries better. I now know what I deserve. And then the society is sending messages. Number one is there's a huge wave of anti-gender movement.
Okay.
And they've been sneaking up on us. And then we just woke up and suddenly a lot of people were far right. Suddenly they're scaling back funding on reproductive health and rights. And then suddenly they're trying to influence a population of young boys and men to say you need to remind them who they are and where they belong. Right? So it's a very strange time. I mean, I've never been prouder to be a woman, but I've also never been more frightened.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it as it is. So what are your thoughts on how you navigate, given that you're pretty self-aware? I mean, that's what I know about Angela. You've done amazing work. Top 40 under 40 last year, she was one of them. And you're doing incredible work with access to menstrual health, having conversations. But how do you reconcile your truth to sort of like the anti-gender sentiments or the sentiments that want to continue to keep you where you're quote-unquote supposed to be, whether you've encountered it and how you navigate it?
I made a decision a long time ago that I'm going to be a voice for the voiceless. So I'm going to bring faith into the conversation. 2 years ago, I reread the Bible, the story of the parable of the talents, just to get to your answer. And it talks about the three guys with different talents, one buried, two double them. For those who don't know, please go and read the scripture. And I've read that so many times. And I asked, and when they were given these talents, the master came back and asked them, what did you do with your talents? And in modern times, talent is your abilities, your skills. In that time, talent was money. And so then I asked myself, if the master comes, am I the barrier or the doubler? So then I started to identify what are my talents. So I love writing. I don't need to I just love writing. I have a LinkedIn newsletter, shameless plug, The Profound Thinker. And then teaching became innately when I did the degree. So I do that. I've built the curriculum for the Hills for Pads for what we do with menstrual health education. Speaking came when I moved here. Everyone kept saying, you have a great voice, you should use it. I was like, I only have a great voice because I'm in this side of the world. I sound a little more different than everybody else. But then I was like, these are God whispers telling me that I need to use it. So I made a conscious decision to invest in assessing, appraising myself every month. Am I doubling or am I burying? And so I would mark myself out of 5. I can never get 5. My dad says you never give yourself 10 out of 10 because there's no room for improvement. So I leave room for improvement, okay? So I measure how I'm doing and how I'm increasing. And so because, again, I have to point out, know who you are. What I say, know who you are, with clothes, without clothes, internally and externally. Because I have made time to know who I am and to be comfortable that I am being called to use my voice, to use my words, to use my teaching, I then now apply it willingly and easily within what we do. I will sign up for things so that I can put myself out there. So, but it takes time. This is Angela now is a makeup of 10, 15 years, okay? But, this is the fast world, so things happen faster. My story could be yours in a year or less, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to invest in understanding what are people saying about you,
and what's my truth?
And what's your truth? Mm-hmm. And then once you know that, then it is really easy to go and protest because you know. And the second thing, I said I have a younger sister, and so I'm always questioning, where are the women? How do I get more women? Okay, is it we create events for women in tech so that they can learn how to penetrate? Is it that we, in the industry, is it that we do women and wealth conversations so people learn how to make money and invest in their money? What can I do? So in that space, I'm clear that number one, I want to do something for my younger sister. Number 2, I'm clear what my talents are, so I will do what I can to make it more powerful and bolder. And that's what I do. I hope I've answered your question.
No, absolutely. Because it goes back to, if I've made a conscious decision, then I know it's likely to come with backlash.
Yes.
And it's how am I building the coping tools to navigate that backlash? Because I've made a decision to be vocal at a time when maybe it's not popular to do that. So yes. I think that's really brilliantly answered. I might need to wind up and now want to prepare one or two of you if you have any questions before we invite Muthoni and Lydia. This is one of those days that I wish we had 3 hours, and I don't say that often because there's so much to take from these 3 incredible women. But this is the first Dada Culture. We're excited that there'll be several more.
Oh my God, the eyes. Anyway, so my name is Joy Mido, and Angie has been quite, I don't know how to say it, but she's been a foundation in me just moving to the next level. So the first
Don't
event...
make me cry, girl. My makeup is really good.
By the way, today I want us to cry. Leave here with tears. Good tears, happy tears.
Yes, so I attended the first Sister Speaks event actually last year. And it was a foundation for women and wealth was what it was. And I got to take myself to the next level because it challenged me to not be in my comfort zone every single time. So Angie runs a podcast. It's called Overreact Podcast. And it was an inspiration because I listened to it and I was like, okay, my voice is not too bad. Or is it?
No, it's great.
Okay. Yeah, so my voice is not too bad. And this is something that I've really wanted to do for a long time. I really love communication. And I think that forum, Angie, was the foundation for me to just dive into starting my podcast. So here comes my question. Oh, by the way, my podcast is coming next week on Thursday.
Nice.
Called Be That Woman.
Be That Woman.
Yes.
Next week, Thursday, it premieres. YouTube?
Yes,
Okay,
YouTube,
awesome.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Okay,
You name
thank
it.
you. All right, you're going to go to your question, yeah?
Yes, so to my question now, how do you silence your inner thoughts? Because I feel like we are the biggest critics of ourselves. We self-sabotage a lot of times because I've postponed this dream for almost a year now. But I got the confidence just seeing other women do it. So how do you silence?
I write, I journal. That's my output. I pray. I have, like how Jesus had his transfiguration crew, I have my transfiguration crew, people who I can talk to about the struggles I'm having. But I don't give fear my ear, because fear just needs an ear, and if you give it, it will disable you, not enable you.
Wow. And I think, wow, that's really good. I don't give fear my ear. It's a very valid question. I think I've also tried to sit with the thought. Sometimes we're scared. And this is, when you're sitting with your thoughts, you have to extend grace. Otherwise, you can go down a tunnel. So what I've done sometimes, the new conversation I'm bringing on my table is shame. Because the other day, I'm like, why is this shame showing up from 10 years ago? So it's because I pushed it aside so much. So in 2025, I was like, what's up? So right now, I'm having conversations with my shame, literally sitting down, finding time and saying, okay, what's the root? Why are you here? Why did you show up now? So sometimes silencing inner thoughts is trying to decipher where they came from.
Yeah.
I like what she's talked. Angela's talked about her coping tools and being able to journal and pray. And I think the first one is trying to pinpoint inner thoughts that kind of keep coming back up. It seems scary and daunting, but I think until you do that, it's very hard to keep them quiet for too long. They'll keep showing up in different ways. But I think once you recognize them, and very gently, because you have to be gentle with this process, because it's heartbreaking, and then very gently begin to try and unravel, is this inner voice around self-esteem? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it embarrassment? Is it pride? And if it is, then how can I navigate a healthier relationship? Things like shame may never really leave you, but you can navigate a healthier relationship with it. I'm not an expert, so I'm not even going to go too far into this.
Just embracing that it exists,
Yeah,
but
and-
don't give it furniture in your mental home.
Don't give it furniture in your mental room.
Home,
In your mental home.
yeah, in here.
That's good.
Yeah, because we talk about private parts being physical parts, but the most important private part is your mental. I don't know what any of you are thinking. I don't know if you're imagining me naked or if I'm imagining you naked. But I have no idea what you're thinking, right? And so if you allow people into your mind, they can manipulate, right? You know this if you've experienced a narcissist, right? So you have to also be really careful with making your thoughts your world. And so don't give them any room, but exit them out, excrete them out of you. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. We might have room for one more question. Oh my goodness. You see,
Aside from journaling and writing, how do you deal with transition, moments of transition in your life? So, like you said, this Angie is like 15 years in the making, yeah? So I'm sure there are points at which you've experienced this shift, whether it's decisions you need to make for you. Yeah, all of these decisions you need to make for you. So how do you handle that transition period where you know that, if you knew me last year for really deal? So how do you handle those?
So we all, in moments in life, there are times you're a caterpillar and there are times you're a butterfly. And so also recognizing that that's how life is and giving yourself grace, right? I still love the old Angela because she made room for this one. But listening to that inner push that's telling you, girl, if you keep moving this way, there's only one way you're going, right? And so you have to pull yourself up before you get too down and it's harder to get up. So I honestly, I also like to listen to people who know me really well when they say certain comments or statements that make me feel some type of way. Then I need to go and sit and be like, why did they think that? Means that there's something I need to change. Or my mom is very good at telling me off in a nice way, but like when she says it, I'm like, gosh, okay, I need to change. And so just recognizing I am struggling with this, but I've always paid attention to the circles I'm in. If the circles I'm in, I'm moving in where I want to exit, I exit, okay? And I've lived in a way where I've never had a close best friend and we walked this journey for many years. I've always been in groups where I'm close for them for a bit, so I'm always good at moving and navigating, so that has always been easy. But I think if you're asking that question, then there are things you need to have a sit down with yourself. So ask yourself, Adele said something yesterday. She said, have a funeral for the lessons and the failures that we don't deem as failures, right? I also do this thing called, I have a funeral for when I'm breaking up with something or somebody, and I write everything that I will never say to them, and I release that. So I like to release. I like to excrete everything out of me. But recognize that there are things that you're in that space, and identify who would be the best person to walk with. But sometimes you also need to be alone, and that's a really uncomfortable place to be, but sometimes it's necessary. I'm big on faith, so God is something I go to. It's a word. The word of God is what I run to. But find your transfiguration crew, the 3 people who can walk with you, and you can be really vulnerable. And I'm here if you need it. Yeah, if you want to connect with me, you can connect via LinkedIn as Angela.w. Sister Speaks Global is also on LinkedIn and Heals for Pads Foundation. And if you want to me personally, I'm at @lashangela_ on all platforms.
Right, because I know there's a lot of people here who still have questions, so hopefully we can make room for that. Thank you for your openness and boldness, and I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to speak to you.
Yes.
It's just shifting the culture of how we see ourselves, how we have conversations with ourselves, but also how we release. I really like the analogy of a funeral. It sounds huge, but it is final.
Oh my
Closure
God.
and clarity are important.
When I see my exes, I'm like, Anilisha Kozika. Anyway, I want to give you your flowers.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
verbal flowers.
Oh, verbal, okay. I was going to be like, okay.
I want to say thank you because Janet, I met Janet when I was writing for an online platform, and Muthoni is someone I also wrote about, and so Janet and I met physically, and she was transitioning out of Citizen, and we've always been in touch. And over the years, especially because we're doing similar things, I want to thank you because you always I said this to you privately, I want to say it publicly. She always creates platforms for me to be in and always extends the chair for me to sit on the table she sat in. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you. Oh, my gosh.
And congratulations with what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, you're amazing. And I love seeing people win. I do. I love it. So if any time there's a room or opportunity, I love to see people win. So glad you're winning.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm winning with you.
Winning. We have to win together. It's so good to see you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes.
We appreciate it.
No, thank you. No, of course. We're just going to get right into it. It's just one of those days. Niko na story mingi sana, but I'm like, we're on a time crunch. We already were introduced to who Muthoni and Lydia are. I think a lot of us follow them and connected with them. And the reason I wanted to speak to Muthoni and Lydia about Dada culture is because for me, these are also women who've kind of shifted the culture on how we what our perceptions are around women, empowerment, sex, wellness. And I think that's why it was so important to hear from those of you who truly have shifted culture in a sense. Sometimes I speak like I'm 90, but I'm like 10 years ago, there's certain conversations that we couldn't have. 10, 15 years ago, there's a way in which perhaps performance or entertainment maybe was skewed to a certain way if you were a woman, for example. And I feel like in a lot of ways, you've both broken those barriers, right? So maybe we can just get into a conversation and start with you, Muthoni, as somebody who has really shifted culture in terms of art, in terms of music, in terms of performance, even in terms of how you convene people, like through blankets and wine. Have you always been somebody who goes against the grain, or is there something that you had to navigate to say, you know what, I want to try this approach differently?
when you're the person who's going against the grain, you don't feel like you're going against the grain. You're just being yourself.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would say that when I'm clear about something that I want, pretty much even heaven couldn't stop me. So when I'm locked in, I'm locked in. So it is other people who experience it as though I'm going against the grain. Me, I'm just locked in. And part of the feeling of being locked in is an excitedness, a surety. Yeah, there's a nervousness, but it's like more joyful expectation as opposed to trepidation and, impending doom. Though I must say, even when that has been the feeling, if I'm locked in, if we are crashing, we are crashing. Kesi badai, So then now what I have had over a period of time to adjust to is this idea that other people perceive me as kind of going against the grain or kind of like pioneering. And so thinking about how to maybe sometimes soften the conversation or to adjust the conversation, to build space for them to find themselves in that space. So if I think, like I can use a really simple practical example. When you come to the festival, there's a big piece of art that separates the two stages, and that's where a lot of people take their photographs, yeah? It's kind of like a blanket icon, right? So in festival world, big art presentations are called installations, right? But when we would be in rooms talking about installations, pretty much nobody knew what we were saying. And when we clocked that, we are having, this moment is discordant because me, I'm saying installation, and you have no framework for what installations are, because to be fair, your framework of festival has been blankets. You've actually never gone to other things. So you don't know what you don't know. And me, I know what I know, and I know what you don't know. So now I have to bridge this world for you to know the thing that I want you to know without upsetting the power dynamic, because you're the person with the money sitting across me. Yeah?
Interesting.
So I have to navigate the power dynamic so you leave the room feeling as powerful as you came in, and like your life has now been expanded, and high key as though what I'm saying is actually kind of your idea, even if I know that you don't know.
That is so profound. Before I come to Lydia to even reflect on that, it wasn't about compromise or having to almost edit yourself down. It almost sounds like you're at this brilliant moment where you said, okay, I see, because somebody would have taken that and said, I'm going to throw it in their face.
Yeah.
So that even if I don't get it, I leave here knowing I knew something you didn't know. But you said, no, I see an opportunity here, almost like a teachable moment.
Absolutely.
Where we both learn, but we both walk away with what we want.
Absolutely. Okay. So it was figuring out how to get what I want and to give you what you need. Because you need the power dynamic, and you need the knowledge, but you don't know that you need the knowledge. So you have to leave the room feeling better than you walked in, and I have to leave the room with what I want.
Okay. Again, I wish I'd known these people a while back. Nimechoma kwa rooms. Because you're there thinking, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to make it seem like you don't. Very apologetic. But you can still integrate that in a way that's not necessarily apologetic, but comes from a place of strategic. Can you resonate with what Muthoni said? Have you experienced that as well?
No, first of all, I'm sitting here like I feel so seen, because when people do tell you like, you're shifting culture, you're like, which reel did I put up that shifted the culture? It's like, because you're just living and leaning into what comes naturally and just in your conviction, it just feels very natural to you. But I guess because people have a different POV, because they can see you, that's where the shifting is happening. But you're just like, I woke up and I just said what I said. So I feel so seen from that perspective. I think that's a really smart business way of dealing with things. And I think that's so powerful as a woman, to know that you're not exchanging or compromising your power. At the end of the day, you got what you want. It's like there's many ways to skin a car, and you're just deciding this one. So I don't know if I've been in this kind of rooms, a lot of times maybe when power dynamics, most of the times I've been approached for something. So most of the time I feel like, you know, you already know what I'm here to do. I don't know if I've ever had to kind of work around spaces like this. And because of maybe the way I'm perceived, especially from the perspective of TMI, it's like you're already shaking things up. So it's expected that we're going to come in this room and maybe shake things up.
Right. Let's speak to that.
Yeah.
And this was some of the conversation that I said 10 years ago, there would have been a different perception.
Yeah.
TMI as a podcast, there's a lot of in-betweeners, I know. But basically, what was it that made you say, and correct me in how I've described it, but you said we're going to have sex-positive conversations and then broaden that to everything from pleasure to joy. And then I remember, because I think I'm also quite conservative, right? Yes. I know it seems different, but the other day I was just like, you're a bit of a prude. It's fine. So it's like, own it. But I find myself still, I just love an education, and I love seeing people who shift culture. I do want to speak to Lydia because the reason I believe you got such a massive following is I think you kind of exhaled what a lot of people were trying to say or talk about. They were doing it with their girlfriends, their partners. You and Muruki came on a podcast and you said, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Was that frightening for you? And when you finally started it and people were like, oh my gosh, you're shaking things. Did you feel that? Did you feel like there was a gap and we needed to get into this?
So first of all, TMI wasn't really about sex. We're just here. We just found ourselves. It was actually just about any conversation we have. It's just as honest as it is, the way you'd have with your girlfriend. Just put a camera here, let's go. That's it. So now, because sex is still such a taboo topic, that's the one you guys remember. In fact, this is about you guys. It's not about us. Us, we're having all conversations about relationships, everything, but it's you guys that are really watching the sex ones, that are really sharing the sex ones. So really, it's you. So for me, I will share my perspective is that being able to see some of the Kenyan problems from the perspective of not always have been here is that I found it so interesting that we want to discuss things like HIV and AIDS and teen pregnancy without discussing sex. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, because how did we get here, right? And it's especially for HIV, and it is not always just about sex, but you know, there's majority of the time tends to be that. So I was just like, I think we are skipping, guys. I think we are skipping. And one of the things that's important to me is to not feel like I left the world as I found it. I just came and I just chewed what I was given and just regurgitated the same thing. So I want to do what I can to create a world that can potentially be different. When we did release TMI, it was more like, oh, you guys really wanted this, didn't you? You really did. It wasn't like, oh wow, it's controversial. We could see people are branding us the sex podcast and these girls are crazy, but the consumption and the sharing and the spreading of this content said something like, we've been waiting for this. That's what we felt.
Right. I think that's what I saw. That's what I realized. That's what made me recognize this is a bit of a culture shift. But actually, maybe people did want this information, they just couldn't see it. So then, the two of you with what you do, you know, Muthoni as really just an artist who's be able to just create music that's memorable, platforms that are incredible, as well as you, Lydia, what you do with TMI, even what you do with wellness. Do you feel a responsibility now that people say, culture shapers, in fact, Janet, I called it Dada Culture and invited you guys because I truly believe you shift culture. Does that carry a lot of responsibility, a lot of weight, or do you feel like, no, I think now the way I'm approaching my work as a result of being recognized as somebody who shifts culture is by doing A, B, C, D? Like, are you doing anything differently now with this knowledge and responsibility that you weren't doing then?
So first, I definitely embrace it. I am a culture maker. That's what you do when you make art. You contribute to culture, but the work that we do with the incubator and with the festival is necessarily transformative on the space. There's a real life impact. So we are culture shapers and we own it. And then the feeling is really stewardship, and it's understanding that everybody is doing their part. Everybody in the scene is doing their part to the best that they can. Where there are gaps, we step in to fill in. So the festival stepped in to fill in a gap called platforming. How do you find person X? The incubator steps in to say, hey, you are an artist manager, but this is your competence, and you need to be at this level because the artists that you want to work with are at this level, right? Or you need to be networked with your peers because actually it's a career and this is a long thing. So you don't want to be building vertically always, you want to be building like horizontally. So then the incubator steps in and says, let's do an upskilling. So there's a real stewardship here. I think all of us have seen the scene has developed. When we started, there was very limited venues that were all owned by entrepreneurs. Now there's a bunch of venues that are artist-owned. That's a super big shift. That's a super big shift, and we don't think, and I'm not just saying music, I'm saying there's comedy bars, for example, right? There's experimental, like venues where they're not really presenting work. It's more like artists can be in residence and kind of play with ideas. Those are not things that existed 16 years ago, you know, when I got into the scene and started to build. So it's recognizing everybody's putting in. So you're a steward. What's your part of this thing? What's the commitment that you're willing to make? How far does your vision extend? Also, we now have lots of folks who work with us. So before it's even about the external user, there's the internal user of the business. Does this business produce a good life for the people who work in the business? What are the decisions that the business is making, and how do those things impact, you know, cash flow? What does that mean for people's earnings? What does that mean for people's growth within the organization? So it is a very heavy responsibility. We think about these things extremely. It's become heavier as we've gone, I guess. There's a lightness that has left, but that lightness has been really replaced with this sense of mission. There's a place we're going, and you have to steward the ship to get where you're going.
Oh, no, that's very insightful. What about you in terms of the responsibility? And in a few moments, I also want to ask you how you think women have been able to see themselves differently through seeing you. I think I want to speak to that, yeah.
So for me, as far as responsibility, I definitely feel responsible. I think from the second even just I saw that my platform was gaining traction, I felt like this platform was God-given. How can I, one, be responsible to myself first? It's like, how am I showing up? What am I doing to create myself and to keep myself as somebody who can hold this honor of having this platform? So I do a lot of self-work from that perspective, because I don't want to be just holding the mic and just opening my mouth saying anything just because I don't respect the platform that I have. So I have that. That's really important. And the second one is responsibility to the people who care to listen to me, the people who are coming to have their questions answered through me. So that means that the way I communicate is different. The way the kind of things I talk about is different. The way I'm dealing with my team, the decisions I'm making in my team, who I'm hiring, all of that is from this perspective of I am responsible because I've been given this platform, and I'm responsible to the people who are making the platform what it is, because if everyone unfollowed me sees just me. So it's like I do understand that it's a very co-creative platform. I'm here doing this and you're here supporting it and listening, because it's a question-answered thing, back and forth. So yeah, I feel very responsible.
And even just gleaning from the feedback that comes, I guess it also just informs the direction of the conversations and all. Again, the reason why for me Dada culture was important is because I'm very much an observer. I look back and I see the people who I feel are giving, I guess, amplifying the range of choices that a woman can make. I didn't come with as much data, and I don't want to get into it, so I'm just going to speak speculatively, but also based on some work that I've done, is that sometimes things are sold as a one-size-fits-all for the choices women and girls have in terms of these, whether it's jobs, whether it's roles, whether it's responsibility, whether it's conversations, what you can and can't, well, what you should and shouldn't talk about, what you can and can't do. Where you're now getting into a space that's either largely male-dominated or there's an ageism factor, there's limitations. Like the world, you wake up as a woman and you have to fight through the limitations, starting from the home to the workplace to the schools. Because remember, as a woman, oh, you're doing things so differently. That's a lot. That's strange. That's odd. And sometimes I've been victim to it, because I also found myself either pioneering things or doing things, because like the two of you, it was just me being me, until you're met with the overwhelming feedback of whether somebody who's supposed to be a supportive partner, for example, says, you're too much. Or whether because now you're taking a certain role, you can only maybe pick your kids, you can't drop them, you're a bad mom. So all these things come, and it just makes you say, okay, must I edit myself so much? What I feel you guys did, and a lot of the culture shapers that I admire, in a sense, you even gave me permission, Bonnie, for example, to say, you can, even as, you're an artist, in that sense, as a woman, I can express myself or listen into music that speaks to a certain message. You had a song that was very empowering for women, and I'm like, okay, she's giving us permission to celebrate ourselves and to say we come in different shapes and forms. Lydia is giving us permission to speak very openly about our mental health and wellness, and giving us permission to say it's okay to have conversations with your partner about pleasure, for example. So I've said many statements and asked a question somewhere in there, but do you feel that, how do you feel, how do women come to you and say, because of who you are and what you do, I've been able to see my options differently? Has that ever happened? And if not, though, how do you think the space you hold allows women to see the range of who they could be?
Janet,
I'm sorry.
Bloody hell. Go on, girl. No, girl, just go.
But I've made sense. I know I contextualized a lot, but yeah.
You have made so much sense. And also, I feel like I've just expanded a little bit in the fact that the way you're seeing me is from the perspective of I've allowed women to feel like they have different options. Again, you're just being yourself, and wow, that's so wonderful. Thank you for saying that. So for me, 100%, one of the most important ways that I guess I'm doing it without meaning to is just kind of living my life as a woman who's unmarried with kids and just existing happily, which I feel is like, what's the big deal? But a lot of women who, when they reach 30, are told 100%, you're dust. This is it. You have no value anymore. You just go to the side and just, your life is done. Yes, and because of how much we elevate marriage and children, whether or not we say it, there is a punishment for not doing that. There is a punishment for not towing the line as far as what patriarchy has decided for women. At 30, you need to be married with kids so that we can think about other things. You're not someone we need to worry about. So just by virtue of the decisions I've made around my personal life and just deciding that I'm not going to settle, I know exactly what I want, and I'm going to just stay put and live a beautiful, gorgeous, big life until there's a partner who can add to that. That alone, I'm giving women more permission to be like, just because I'm 29 doesn't mean I need to take abuse. I need to be in a situation where I know this man is not going anywhere. I need to be dealing with somebody who's taking from me. I'm the one who's paying the bills and doing all of that. They have made the choice that, do you know what? If Lydia hasn't died, even me, I won't die. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the ways. As far as mental health and wellness, women, we are shamed for everything. And we are also shamed for some of the ways that we struggle mentally. Considering we have most of the load, we are supposed to be the ones who are dealing with things the best way. Right now, there's a male loneliness pandemic, right? Big time. That's what it's being amplified. But the struggles that women are going through on a day aren't pandemics. That's just a Friday. That's just a normal Friday, you know? So women being able to own that I am allowed to struggle. I can have this husband and kids and take care of all of them, but I need time to myself. I need to take care of myself. I need to pour into myself. I'm seeing more grabbing my time and my resources for myself a bit more just by virtue of what I amplify. Obviously sex, I know you guys are doing the thing there. I know you guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing in the bedroom and asking for your orgasm, demanding for your orgasm, right? Yeah. Right? Why are you saying right in small caps? I hope this is not the energy you're taking. You deserve pleasure, yes or no? That's one way, I guess.
They didn't see how that conversation was going to come from left field. They were like, yes, I'm demanding. Very powerful what you've said, and that those two truths can exist. Is I can be, a wife or a partner and a mom, but I can also be tired. It doesn't make me a sinner. So I think holding two truths is something that we need to normalize. Me saying motherhood is hard, I love it, but it's hard. And those two truths can exist. That's really profound. What about for you, Mvani?
So, first, I would hope that there is a girl or a woman who, because they see the way I present or the things that they associate with me, feels empowered to find their own selves and their own truths, right? I'm truly not a template for anybody. Do not pedestal me. I will disappoint you immediately because my humanness is my humanness, right? And I don't think, and this is a thing that artists really sort of struggle with, is when you make art that really connects with somebody, people really have all sorts of thoughts, perceptions, and ideas about who you are as a person. And I really would like to urgently urge us all to release the artist idol, love the art, and just leave it there. Because the artists behind the art are just human beings. Some of those songs have been written for them. They don't really necessarily believe those things to be true. That's not really their lived experience, but you can sing it well and you can animate it and it can come to life and then it can really impact you. And so you're on the other end really feeling like, wow, I've really connected with artist X, and artist X is not even about that life. You can derive inspiration from the work that we create, and you can also release me from your expectations of who I should be because of the work, right? So that's one piece. And I know that it has had impact because then, you know, girls come in, women, peers, people tell me stuff, beautiful stuff all the time. And to be fair, I kind of struggle with onboarding it because it's so important that, for me, I always feel like, love the work, but don't be too attached to who you think I am, right? Because even me, I'm allowed to change. Tomorrow, my next version is always, even in this moment, my next version, I'm always becoming. So don't be too married to what you think you know about me. But take what you should. I think this is really the way I approach life. Take what is valuable for you.
For you in that season.
In that season, in that moment, take what's valuable. And I think about, like, when we were growing up, there was an epic girl band that had Joy Mboya, Susanna Kibukosia, Susan Matiba. They were called Musically Speaking. And I remember the first time I watched them and I was like, who the heck are these girls? I didn't know that there was such a thing like a Kenyan pop girl band. And Joy Mboya had this incredible mohawk. And it was stunning to me. It was incredibly stunning. And I didn't realize until maybe last year I was telling her that she was such a big imprint. I didn't know anything about Joy Mboya. I mean, there was no social media, there was nothing. I just had that impression. And the impression that lasted for me is just like, yeah, you can make whatever you want with your friends and you can just express yourself and like, you can just be who you are. So then, some years later, and I was like in part of expressing myself, and I wanted to have this hairstyle. So I had a mohawk, definitely templating Joy, but also templating all this like Turkana women, because actually that's their hairstyle. And then people would say to me all the time, "Wow, you're so brave to have. Wow, you're so brave. You're so daring." And I was like, I'm unclear. I'm brave because I cut hair. This thing grows every 2 weeks. Really, there's nothing brave about having this hair. What's happening is you're imprinting your own insecurity about self-expression. You're now labeling me brave so that you don't have to deal with why aren't you fully expressed?
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So now, as opposed to just being like, oh, because it's really different from that's dope. That's dope is a recognition of like, yeah, that's fly. It's an aesthetic. And you keep it moving, right? But when you impress on me like bravery, or you must be so brave, you must be so different, and I'm like, not at all. It's hair, it grows, and next week it can even look different. Why are you so attached to my perceived bravery? What's going on there?
Yeah, what's going on there? And I think, Lydia, and this is what I'm coming to, is to the what's going on with people feeling a little bit afraid to go there. Okay, I really like how you've made that difference of, now it's an aesthetic and a style. You've made it something beyond. But what I'm hoping to achieve through conversations like this is for people to feel permission. I don't know if the word permission is right, and please feel free to push back, guys, by the way. It's just to allow yourselves to journey in your mind to where it is that you want to be. Because I think people journey, and then there's a stop somewhere. Either the parents or a partner or society saying, hey, please push brakes, or do those things now because you're in college. Have fun, go out. Then when you're going out, let's say 4 months or 5 months into maternity leave or a year, remember now you're being told, wait, you were supposed to have left that behind. Or now you're in your 40s and you want to explore art. You are supposed to have a job. You're supposed to have finished that. The reason I find these conversations important is the message it is sending to women. It's a very unhealthy narrative. And then compounding that is the culture of, you kind of alluded to male loneliness, and the bigger thing that I was reading about the other day called incel culture, involuntary celibacy, that is creating a linkage to even compromising the safety of women and girls. Like me, I really go in. It's a series, and I'm like, just put pause on adolescence and then let's read. But all of these things, starting with perception of how you see yourself, looking at how Muthoni and Lydia are doing, and then looking at what society is either quietly or overtly trying to tell me. How do I break through all of that to just allow myself to become and to be? I think there's a massive barrier in women trying to become. And I think the reason why speaking to people like you two is not to pedestal, and I love that you've used that word, but to say, I think you continue to allow yourselves to become, and you may not realize how many others cannot do that. So we are just like, wow, she really is becoming, and because of what she's saying and doing, she's given me the resources or permission to say, now I know better. I can actually make a different decision now with my partner. I can make a different decision in my business because I think I like what Muthoni and Lydia did. All of that ties in. And I didn't see it until I was also finding myself editing myself or feeling like I want to become this way, but I feel like there's a tide that's asking me to be another way. And then trying to straddle those two things. It's related. I'm coming back. But you know what I mean? I think it's because you alluded to something like what's going on there.
Yeah.
So how do we speak to that? How do we speak to all of those barriers and narratives that are really, in a sense, saying you just relax and sit tight and pretty in your corner.
Yeah.
But you don't want to. You want to do more. You want to be more. How do we speak to that?
Yeah. So, may I? Yeah. So I think, truly and honestly, it's got to start at you. So my pathway has been sort of follow my bliss. The thing that I remember, my earliest memories of myself is singing or dancing or doing some kind of entertainment or singing for the trees or something, and a lot of that had no audience. It was really kind of just me occupying my own mind. And I see it now, like with my toddler who's like crazy about music, and he just self-entertains, you know. And I remember that. And so a lot of my life was, I already knew very early, oh, I like this thing, and I'm leaning in. And then society kind of like pushing back. So whether it's like parents being like, yeah, you can do that music thing as long as it's part of extracurricular. Yeah, you can do it. You can be in choirs extracurricular, but it's not the main thing. Or as I became older, then it's like there's a respectability that's for women. So maybe you can be in music, but maybe sing gospel music, right? You know, don't be that chick. Don't be that whore-looking chick, right? Or, yeah, you can do this music gig stuff, but you can't really understand the technical, like how technical desks work and like how to develop a good lighting rig. You can't really, you know, society kind of always, you know. And the true north for me has been follow the bliss. So where does the bliss sit? The bliss sits at creating. And I think that's innately the thing that we are all here to do. It's not so much the actual manifested thing, it's the creating, the process of that thing, because the process allows us to tap into who we really are, which is that God energy, the thing that is the part of whatsoever your concept of God, and if the word God doesn't work, drop it, universe, whatever you want to think about. But pretty much the organizing principle that keeps the world as you know it in place, the thing that makes gravity, and the sun in relation to the earth and the earth in relation to all the other planets, that principle, when you are in creation mode, you are in that principle, right? And there's a lot of power and a lot of assuredness when you are inside that thing. Like when you're creating, and maybe you feel this way too, when you're not organizing, when you're not trying to plan how the thing is going to, when you are actually in the creation mode, you are in God mode. And that's unlimited. And so then that becomes the due north. So as life is unfolding, that's the place I start the day, and that's the place I end the day. And when the day is having an overwhelming feeling, that's the place I go into my mind, and it may be listen to a song or listen to a poem or watch some video or something that gets you back into kind of that organizing principle, because then you have to contend with who you are. And who you are isn't all these stories and narratives, sister, mother, daughter, orphan, abused, whatever the things on the exterior. All those things actually will pass. They must fade. That's why this life game has a finite endpoint and no one gets out of it alive. So that can't be really who you are, because that's all transient. So when you are in your organizing principle, when you are in God energy, there is a true understanding and feeling of the limitlessness, the endlessness, the everlastingness, the powerfulness, the never getting it done. It will never get done because you're constantly, permanently evolving. Because that which you call God is permanently, constantly evolving. The universe is being created as we speak. It didn't finish and then now you are plonked here, you know. So that's been really helpful for me as an organizing principle for my life. And so then the question is, when I'm not in that mode, when I'm in my fear energy or my confused energy or overwhelmed or comparison or etc., I have a point of reference for, but there's another version of me that's not this thing. So then I go back to the thing, and now life has become that balance of where am I spending more of my energy? Am I on this thing that I really am, or am I in this thing that I have made, that my ego mind has made? So this, I think, is a question of how, I'm trying to answer your question of how, where do I start in, like there's something going on there, where do I start? And I'm saying you start at the beginning, which is kind of like your identity, like really who you are versus who you think that you are as a beginning place, because who you are has a lot of, unlimited power. So if who I think I am is powerless and who I know I am is powerful, which version am I going to walk with?
Because that can also give you the grounds to navigate whatever is coming at you, of coming back to, but I know who I am, I know what my truth is.
Exactly.
I know things will come to me,
exactly.
but I'm going to spend the day unpacking that.
So first of all, I would say that's it. You really put it so eloquently. I won't even say that. I would say yes, what you've said. It's grounding. You know, all of this, like all of these expressions, like it's something you're putting out and going. Then you get the feedback. Then it becomes a whole thing. But the truth is, when I'm quiet and I'm centered and I know who I am, when I move from that place, there's no all of these like cages and all of these. They don't exist, right? Or even if they do exist, it's not really in my world. But what I would say, it's twofold for me. Number one, it's you need to start small with shaking up those like pushbacks so that you can realize it's like they aren't really real. Their power, we give them the power, right? So if, for example, it's a matter of like, sex is really taboo, you guys should not talk about sex. And if you talk about sex, by the way, you're never going to get brands to come to your podcast because, Kenya is very family oriented. And so obviously all the money goes to family. Literally, TMI is never not without sponsors, ever. So when you shake up a little bit, you realize that some of those are they're illusions, right? They're illusions. You just need to step into your power a little bit. And the key, by the way, to these cages, a lot of times, you're holding it in your hand, begging for someone to open it, but you have the key to your hand. So when you do something small that shakes things up a bit, when you speak up in a room when it's like, whoa, you shouldn't speak up, the second you go onto the other side, you're like, oh, it's like, wait, nothing happened. There's a lot of the scary things that we perceive will happen when we truly step in our power are perceived. They are not. In fact, most of the time when you step out, why do you get rewarded? If truly there was a punishment, every person who stepped out would be dead. They would burst into flames. So there is an illusion. And so that's the first one. The second thing is I try my best to not even be in conversations or amplify conversations that perpetuate the power of these pushbacks. There is some pushback in that when you come and you speak up about, being celibate, you're triggering someone. When you talk about mental health, you're triggering someone. When you talk about, you're triggering someone all the time.
Persecution exists. I think it was my mom when I was in high school, and I was a student leader union something, and I was speaking out against how students were feeling, the injustice of the school. And I took all that because I was the representative. And I remember the headmaster basically gaslighting and saying, you are the reason guys are refusing to eat. And then called my dad. And it was so hard. I'll never forget entering the car and just bursting into tears. Because I felt like, but I didn't think I did anything wrong. And so my dad was like, let me call your mom. Called her, and I remember she said, and I'll never forget, but she did say, you have to remember that when you speak for truth or live in your truth, you will be persecuted. You just have to choose how you're going to navigate that. Because she went through the same thing when she was pushing back on somebody who was mismanaging funds in a church. She was persecuted. And throughout my life, talking about periods back then, I was called vulgar. Yeah. People were like, how dare you talk about periods? And so it follows you. So I think what I'm hearing from you, Muthoni and Lydia, is, and maybe you guys in your room, you have your truth, you have your thing, you have your why. It's understanding that I think in a world that is still patriarchal, there'll be pushback against a dream you have, but it's trying to stay rooted in that element of what, God's given you, that gift, and moving with that. And I think then finding coping tools, because you will walk out the door and have just a barrage of opinions. It's like, okay, so what is your coping tool? But it's knowing that it will happen.
Hi, my name is Mercy Judy. Thank you for creating this platform, Janet. I like the conversation we have today on just stepping out and being different. And even before that, I'd like to maybe pick your brains a little bit on doing not very different things. For example, Janet, when, let's say you are getting into media, there are other people in media. Lydia, there are other people who have podcasts, other influencers. Muthoni, there are other musicians or other people who create festivals. So the current fear I have is, I want to do something, but so many people are doing it. Before I get to being different, how do I be comfortable in being different in the same thing? Get the question?
Yeah. That's good.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would say, whatever it is that you're trying to do, is it in the creative space? Then for absolutely sure, that's the best place to do whatever everyone else is doing. Because in creativity, because it's coming from this very unique place and it's an expression of a human, then only you can do it the way that you do it. And because creativity it's not like if I listen to you, I cannot listen to any other music. Because you, like that bit of you, maybe what I'm going to connect creatively with you is such a unique part of me. That bit, it's like only you can give. So when it comes to creative expression, it's unique and you have a space because that POV nobody else has.
And maybe what I would only add to that first, is also don't die 10 deaths. You're dying a death that doesn't even exist. You've already decided that there is too much or there's so much, and so what do you have to offer? So now you're dying the death of what do I have to offer? You've actually made the offer. Does that make sense? And we do that all the time. That's literally what self-sabotage looks like. Okay, if it doesn't work, the sky won't fall. You know that because you don't make the sky stay up. So the sky's not gonna fall. Worst case scenario is you're going to learn something from that thing that will help you shape a more unique offering within that space.
I think a lot of this is reward factor. People feel like if I don't get the reward or the likes or the support, then it's not working. But I think kind of to Muthoni's point, okay, if you've done it for some time and you feel like I need to shift or pivot, I've spent my life pivoting because I follow that. I'm like, I'm enjoying this, but I could pivot or add on to. I failed at some things. It's like failing forward. I talk about it all the time because it teaches you. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you kind of learned a mistake that you don't have to repeat. So I think that's really good. Any other? I think we literally have time for maybe 1 or 2 max. There's somebody there. And we can try keep it brief. Thank you. Your name and your question.
Thank you. My name is Michelle, and my question goes to mostly Muthoni. 8 years ago, you released Kenyan Message, and it's still the reality we live in today. So we've mentioned something about how what was might not be right now. Is the same person, the activist in you that incorporated that activism in your art, the same person still sitting here with us today?
Thank you so much. First, I really don't identify with the tag activist. I really think I'm an active citizen. And I think it's because I had a lot of good education, and naturally my personality is curious about the world. And I have a strong sort of sense, a strong personal moral compass. I'm able to identify something that I think is an injustice, and I'm able to speak to it, but I really don't identify as an activist. So, you remember how earlier I was like, unshackle me, please. I ask you as a fan, unshackle me. But if what you caught in that thing, in that song, because for me that song was really inspired by what I felt was an incredible moment. How can the whole healthcare system, how can we be okay with doctors not being in the healthcare system? It was a doctor strike. The original doctor strike is what sparked that song for me. And explaining that to my producers who are from Switzerland, who didn't have my context, for them it was unfathomable. And it was helpful to see it through their eyes, like, actually this is entirely, I know it's mad, but truly this thing is, like, it's more mad than I even think it is, right? So you can't imagine my exhaustion that we're actually in a worse place now than we were at that time. I don't need to be an activist. I can just be an artist who says the thing that I want to say. If the thing that I am saying also then moves things forward and is a version of activism, so be it. But that's not my intended end goal. The intention is to be a really sincere artist. I really tune into the inspiration, and I really speak as honestly as I can to the situations that I'm writing about.
Sometimes you feel that the labels people put on you, you have to follow through with them.
Yeah.
You're an activist, so please.
Where's your activism?
Where's your activism?
And I'm like, no, today I just wanna
if you're quiet on one issue, they DM you. Have you not seen this?
Exactly.
I'm like,
exactly. Like no.
Yeah. But again, it's that, just giving yourself permission to do what you really feel passionate about. I don't have to do more. What I'm doing is enough. Gosh, I really wanted to go so much deeper into this because, again, like for me, it is that culture of the narrative that because there's so many spaces, I'm not sure I can add my voice in a different way. Or because I'm an artist who actually speaks about things happening, I have to also add the tag of activism. Whatever is thrown at us by society, it'll be relentless. And I don't know that it's going to get better. I think we're going to go through a phase where we really have to stand true to what we believe in, even when there's overwhelming pushback. But that's what happens when bullies have a lot of power. And, over the years, the bullies mobilized globally in different countries. That's why in Gambia the other day, all of a sudden, they were like, oh, we're going to make FGM legal. People woke up, they were like, wait, what? What's been happening? But it's been resourced. Now, a Gambian minister was telling us, oh, there's money in it. These guys have been mobilizing for 5 years. So over time, our voices, even though they were loud, it was making people who are really well resourced and strategic, they were just busy trying to come together to be like, Maze, we need to remind these guys who's in charge. We need to remind them. And it's part of what I think will continue to happen. But what we can do is keep having these conversations. And remember, I really like speaking to, remember what you're passionate about beyond what the world tells you you can do. Because the world is actually, a lot of the time, giving you the message that you should not. You have to know that. So even if you go out there and you're like, hey, Mazeni meambiwa so many times that I shouldn't, that's part of what patriarchy is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you scared. We coexist with amazing, incredible men. Being somebody who's proud to be a woman doing what she's doing, don't buy the lie that it's anti-men. It isn't. There's so many weird narratives that I think are being thrown at us. No, love men, love women. Do what's right, stand in your truth, and understand that standing in your truth will come with an element of persecution. Ask yourself, how do I navigate this? Because it's going to come anyway. That's just a given. It's going to come, but it doesn't mean it limits you from going forward. Understand it will come, and just try and get all these amazing nuggets and the coping tools, because you also have to be very, you also have to think about your mental health. You have to think about pouring into yourself as you pour into others. I was telling the room just a few minutes ago, I realized I'm grappling with compassion fatigue. I didn't know it was a thing. Yeah. Because, you know, you're doing all these things and pouring. You can't pour into others if you don't pour into yourself first. Bottom line. But thank you guys so much, even for the insights you've given on just perception, you know, being able to do what you love, doing it well. And thank you for being culture shapers. Sorry for the pressure. It is what you are. Thank you so much for coming here, you guys. Can we do another Dada Culture? You'll all come. We'll keep you there the whole day. We'll allow you to use snacks and use the restroom, but I really do want to have these conversations because there's a global shift happening, and I think we need to be aware of it. Our agency, which is collective and beautiful, I love seeing women coming into their own, is being fought with pushback, but we don't have to then relent to it. Just how do we navigate it with the men and women and children in our lives? That's what Dada Culture is supposed to be. So I'll let you know how and when the next one is. In the meantime, please enjoy the rest of What Women Want Summit. There's so many incredible workshops happening, including in this room in just a few moments. I do have to bid you all goodbye, but thank you so much. And thank you too, and Angela, thank you. A round of applause for Muthoni, drama queen. A round of applause for Lydia KM.